This Late Night Linux Family podcast is made possible by our patrons. Go to latenightlinux.com/support for details of how you can join them. Support us on Patreon for access to ad-free episodes and early releases. That's latenightlinux.com/support. Hello and welcome to episode 359 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 2nd of November 2025. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Still dying.
Graham.
Good evening.
And Will.
Hello.
So as we mentioned last time, we all went to the Ubuntu Summit recently. Graham was there working, but the other three of us all got invited along to participate. Rather than give you a blow-by-blow of what we got up to there, which would be boring, I thought it'd be more interesting to ask the question, what did you learn at this Ubuntu Summit?
Before I get to any kind of big conclusions, of which I have some, I just wanted to talk quickly, and I know that you don't really want to do blow by blow, but I just want to talk quickly about Mark's opening keynote, because there were a few topics in there that really resonated with me. I didn't necessarily learn anything, but I did think that it was an interesting way of looking at the open source ecosystem with a view particularly on Ubuntu. But it was about the whole ecosystem as a whole. And there was even a little bit of politics in there, which I was quite heartened to hear. Mark was talking about how if one open source distro, particularly Ubuntu, is doing well, then really that fuels the expansion of open source and is good for everybody. A rising tide raises all boats was the quote about Ubuntu and open source growing and everything being better for everybody. And I think that is a good point, that more open source is a good thing. And I don't think anybody can argue with that. He talked about how Ubuntu needs to balance the commercial nature of Canonical, the business, and Ubuntu, the free open source operating system. That is a very tricky balance to make. And I think that what we saw at the summit last week is a good example of how they've done well there, where we had commercial entities showing off their latest and greatest, and we had community people talking about things that they'd done with Ubuntu. And I thought that was a nice marrying of those two concepts. And then I've got extensive notes, but the last thing I wanted to touch on from Mark's keynote was that he opened his talk talking about how open source is a counter to the prevailing narrative in the world. And my interpretation of this was that open source and the free software movement generally are the opposite of the right-wing extreme politicians that we see in the world at the moment. And I really felt good about that I am, as far as I'm concerned, on the right side of history here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, in the interview that people will have heard last time that I did with Mark, that was what he was worried about, was balkanization. And I've read some other interviews that he's done with other people at the summit, and he used that word, balkanization. And, you know, you look at America first and, you know, this insular politics that seems to be spreading around at least the Western world. Open source is the counter to that. It's the obvious counter to it.
Well, there is no other option, is there? We can't just consume software produced by other people and try and change things that way. This is the only way we can change things.
Well, yeah. And, you know, something that I picked up on as a general kind of vibe was the business case for open source. Like, it wasn't just some kumbaya, you know, hippie love-in. It was about the pragmatic case for things being open source. And you know, something that I've been thinking a lot about over the last year or so is this business case for open source. And I really did see quite a lot of that there. Like with the DreamWorks people talking about releasing Moonray as open source, the kind of, 3D rendering thing. It's way beyond me. But I asked them when it came to the Q&A, like, why did you do this? It can't just be pure altruism. And they said, well, no, it's not. It's better for us for it to be open source and for people to be able to contribute to it, and all of the other great arguments for open source in business. And I think that business case is like fundamentally important. It's fine to have people, you know, hacking on things as hobbyists or whatever, but if you really want to progress the idea of open source and have like really professional software, money has to be involved.
I don't think there's any doubt that money has to be involved. We haven't got an ecosystem to have as open source without people being paid to do the work on it. We've talked a lot in the past about how that happens, and there isn't a one-to-one mapping with the way I think it works with other industries where you kind of have this idea, you market the idea and you own the idea. Open source in the way that we do it requires a different kind of thinking. And I think there are some companies that are making a success of that, but there is no easy recipe for it. You just have to, in a way, do the right thing, remain innovative, and hope that it'll find you, which is difficult in this current environment.
Well, related to all of this, I learned that Canonical are taking RISC-V very, very seriously.
Yeah, I think that had to be one of the standout talks, because I don't know who that guy is who runs the RISC-V company, but he is comedy gold, I think would be the word I would use for him.
Yeah, he's quite the character.
Wasn't he the boss of Deep Computing?
Yeah, that's the guy, yeah. Very funny, very smart sort of guy. And as you said, he made all his money on software, and now he's going to lose it all on hardware. So good honesty there, I think.
Yeah, but he was talking about some really ambitious stuff, like having a completely open source stack, top to bottom, with the hardware, including GPUs and stuff, which seems a bit optimistic to me, but I think you need people like that who are, aiming for that, just real, reach for the stars and all that. And it did make me feel like RISC-V is going to actually succeed. And we're going to have 3 very serious players in the ISA market, x86, ARM, and RISC-V. And importantly, he said that it's Linux first. He's not interested in Windows or Android. It's Linux first, which, again, filled me with confidence.
Yeah, and building on that, he also mentioned that RISC-V are beating ARM to new features. Like the new features are arriving in RISC-V first because of this rapid prototyping model they've got, where they are able to write the drivers upstream in the kernel before the hardware exists, because they built it out on FPGAs and they know it's all going to work. And they're able to get that software into the kernel upstream before the silicon comes out, which is really extraordinary.
What I really liked about his talk was that you covered it a little bit before, the fact that he was all in, even though he admitted that there was a bad business case for it at the moment. He didn't care. He was all about doing the right thing. He mentioned doing that a few times. I'm just about doing the right thing. And that seems like such a great antidote to the purely money-driven approach that we see with so many other kind of enterprise leaders. I really hope it succeeds.
Completely different to that was John Seeger's talk about the engineering effort that's going into the next LTS, which was, I think we've covered most of those topics in previous episodes, but one thing that I sat up and took notice to was that 2604 is going to have TPM-backed full disk encryption. So this is like really locked down, secure, good quality, robust, reliable encryption for your hard disks. So I'm excited to see that.
You have been able to do that in the past, but it sounds like this is going to be more default and less experimental.
Yeah, and it's always involved a lot of jumping through hoops previously and reading of documentation and all of that kind of boring stuff. This sounds like it's going to be in the installer, check the box, it's just going to work. I mean, I'm guessing, but I hope that that's where we're going to get to, that all of that complexity will be taken away. Because if you configure it incorrectly, you undermine the entire purpose of it being TPM-backed full disk encryption. So to have all of that stuff done for you, I'm very happy to see.
So I think I can say something a little bit about this. There was a blog post from a year ago, for example, that explained how FDE was going to be implemented. And it actually takes something from Ubuntu Core, which is trying to create full disk encryption from that very first, as soon as you turn the machine on. And what's interesting about this is that Ubuntu Core is obviously up until now built just for devices. And the full disk encryption in the classic systems is going to be based on the same system that Ubuntu Core is using. So there's an interesting overlap of both of those, kind of what had been separate projects with what's going to happen with the classic Ubuntu.
One thing I noticed was that it was relatively diverse. Like there were, women there, people of color, like not what I'm used to going to most tech conferences and events where it's just like all middle-aged blokes who look like me or skinny versions of me.
If anything like this can encourage more diverse inclusion at events like this, then I think it's a great thing. And I hope that is encouraging and will encourage other people to get involved.
Well, yeah, and I think it's a testament to how good a job Mauro did of organising this. I mean, I know you helped him with it, but I don't know if it was something that was consciously thought about, but you lot did a good job of it.
I did very little. The community team, Mauro, Aaron and Sebastian, they will have purposely have done this, yes.
Yeah, again, it's kind of, there was that kind of diversity, but then I think as Will mentioned, there was the diversity of some real corporate talks, but then also some real community stuff as well.
One of the cool things I saw was one of the guys talking about sudo RS, and the best part of that was the fact that he talked about how the original sudo developer was actually massively involved in both helping them how things worked, explaining things, and they could ping off each other all the time. And I thought that was a really good thing. So I was kind of worried when I heard about that, and obviously the Rust Core utils too, where you're worried that you're kind of coming in essentially where somebody's already got a project that's existed perfectly fine for ages. I mean, that's debatable if it's fine, but yes. And you felt, are you going in there stepping on people's toes? And that was such a cool thing to see where that had actually been integrated into it. They immediately had thought that themselves and got the main dev involved. So that was really cool. And I really quite liked that.
Yeah, I mean, if you see what the arseholes on the internet say, like, oh, it's just Rust for its own sake and our memory safety is just bullshit or whatever. But the memory safety aspect of it isn't even the primary motivator when it comes to the sudo RS thing. It's more about performance and stripping out features that are just not needed anymore.
Yeah, and funnily enough, it inspired me to swap mine out. So I am now running on the latest sudo RS. So if I can't access my machine in a while, you'll know why.
And what have you aliased it so it's just sudo?
Well, more, in fact, it just path precedence. So I put it into user local sbin, and then that way it worked. But while I did it, I had actually got an alias for sudo, which I then tried to take out, and I did it in a weird sequence. So I couldn't sudo in that account to change the name of the symlink I had in user sbin. So that was great crack. And luckily I was able to get around it. But yeah, I nearly shat myself. I thought, oh my God.
That sounds like an interview question for a sysadmin job.
Yeah, it's like always have a backup account.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is an easy-to-deploy zero-config VPN that allows you to build simple networks across complex infrastructure. Sign up, install Tailscale on the devices you want to connect, and you can get going in a few minutes. Whether you want to connect back to your home LAN while traveling, send backups to a friend's house, or securely access your Kubernetes cluster, Tailscale combines the power of WireGuard with simple installation and configuration for a seamless experience. Tailscale's personal plan is free forever. You'll get up to 100 devices and 3 users at no cost with no credit card required. So support the show and try Tailscale for free today at tailscale.com/LNL. If you'd like to bring Tailscale to work, use code LATENIGHTLINUX for 3 free months of any paid plan. Thousands of companies like Instacart, Hugging Face, and Duolingo have already made the switch. That's code LATENIGHTLINUX. Well, one thing that I learned was what the AI bubble bursting is probably going to look like. Because we all know it's coming, right? And, there's very speculation as to what's going to be around after it. And a concept that I, for some reason, I hadn't heard these words, small language model. I mean, it's just such an obvious concept. Instead of a model that is like ChatGPT or whatever, that is just trying to do everything, I think that once the bubble bursts, we're going to be left with a lot of small language models that are suited to very specific tasks. Like it'll know all the documentation about Python, and you'll be able to ask it questions about Python, and it'll be mostly right about that. And so it'll be somewhat helpful, just for an example. And really, you're not talking about AI as such at that point. You're just talking about machine learning. And so I think I've got a clearer idea now of what the post-AI bubble is going to look like.
Do you expect that to be monetized by a few big companies, or do you think that will be more of an open source distribution model?
Why not both?
Yeah,
I suppose. I think some companies will survive. Look at what Google and Microsoft are doing. They've gone all in on this shit. And when the bubble bursts, they're going to have to pull back a little bit on that. But it's not going to sink the companies probably. Whereas OpenAI is just finished, obviously. And, Anthropic, that sort of thing. They're just going to go away. But the companies that have got actual products as well, Microsoft, Google, Apple, whatever, they all survive. They'll take a big hit and probably a drop to the share price and all the rest of it. But they will integrate some of this machine learning and AI stuff just on a smaller scale, I think. But then also there'll be loads of open source stuff. And yeah, it was like terribly environmentally wasteful and unethical to train it in the first place. But like it will exist. Those models will be out there and you will be able to run them.
I have to say, one of my takeaways, which I quite enjoyed on my giant stack of smug that was sitting, was quite a lot of the talks that did talk about AI, did talk about the fact that AI in the current form is really badly done. It was kind of a bit refreshing because I thought it was going to be a lot of industry people gone on about how we're going to have artificial general intelligence any minute now. It's all going to be brilliant, where that didn't actually happen. It was quite reserved. And one of the projects that was quite cool was I guess it's I don't know, they call it a AI chip, but I mean, it's a machine learning type thing.
Neural processing unit.
Yes, thank you. That's a better word for it. But the fact was that was actually able to sit there with localized models that it ran on it and, training it to look at cars and identify car types, and had a cool model set up for that, which looked like a garage. And if you looked at the screen, it looked indistinguishable from a real life garage. And then it was a guy's massive hand going in to move one of the cars. Like, Jesus Christ, what the hell's going on? But it was the way that did that on board on the chip itself that was quite interesting, because, you're not beholden to somebody's, mystical cloud offering to you to get it to do things. And it's, obviously not going to be as quick as the likes of a big data center, but you can do smart things with it. And, it's private. I thought it was really good to see that.
Yeah, that was running on a Rubik Pi 3. And we were looking at this demo, and then the lady came in with a box of them. I thought, oh yeah, trying to sell these £100 things to us. And then she's like, have you got a blog or anything? I was like, oh, we've got quite a popular podcast. She's like, well, as long as you talk about it, I'll give you one. So me and Phelim got one, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm genuinely looking forward to using it.
Oh yeah, come on. You guys are sold out. Where's mine?
Well, you weren't showing interest like I was, so...
Yeah, so I haven't played with it yet, but I will do, and hopefully in a couple of weeks we can talk about that, maybe. We need to get on with playing with it once you get over your man flu, Phelim.
Oh, please, any moment now. Could it cure that? Could I eat it? Would it fix that now?
Try it. Who knows? So yeah, we will definitely report back on that, because we did promise to at least talk about it. Because we got given, these things are like £100 new, and we just got given one, which was pretty sweet. I'm thinking I'll play with it and then maybe send it to you, Will, because you probably would make more of it than I can. It's like a little Raspberry Pi thing, but specifically meant to run these local models.
It's got some sort of AI accelerator on board, which is able to do 12 TOPS, which is trillion operations per second. And that is like 10 times faster than the little Coral AI TPU that I've got, which is classifying images coming from my security cameras. So this thing has got some power. I'll be interested to see if I can hook it up to something like Frigate.
Right. Well, hopefully it's not going to be too much fun, and I will actually allow you to have it. You can pry it from my hands, but we'll see on that one.
Another thing that I learned that I didn't already know about was the Ubuntu Academy. They have put together a whole bunch of qualifications on Ubuntu, and they're currently working on, I think, if I remember correctly, the beta of the desktop and Linux command line basics, I think. And these are going to be tests that you can pass and get a formally Ubuntu recognized qualification. The tests that they were talking about during the talk are in beta at the moment. So if you're interested, you can go to the Ubuntu Academy website and sign up, take the beta tests for free, get the qualification, which stands, and provide your feedback about the overall content of the course. So I think this is a really good chance for people to get some recognized qualifications on their resume, recognized by Ubuntu. And I think this is a nice offering, and it's free at the moment. So make the best use of it.
This hurts me deeply to the core, but Microsoft are cunning shitebags because they always somehow manage to find the two funniest, most enthusiastically open but also nice people to send along, and then trick you that they as a company are exactly like those two brilliant people they sent along. So the WSL talk was quite cool. Not from a WSL is great way, but from actually a way to get companies who may not have an open source story in their products, whatever, to actually do that, and to sort of how you can convince your company to do that. And the two guys doing the talk were actually very, very funny. So yeah, enjoyable, annoyingly.
Well, as I said to both of them, great talk, but also fuck Microsoft. And they said, yeah, we totally get that. But then that was only a joke that I said that to them. But I did say, look, I understand Microsoft is a massive, massive organization. And there's a lot of cool people working there who are young and have no memory of the Linux as a cancer stuff. They were there way after that. Obviously, there's some pricks still working there, maybe higher up or whatever, but there are definitely cool people working at Microsoft. And those two guys proved it. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when who knows what it'll be. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.